right. Well, I got to open up with coffee because I had Charlie Benante on the show, and my first question for him was, who has better coffee, you or David Ellefson? So that's my question for you. Who has better coffee, David Ellefson or Charlie Benante?
Well, I'm convinced there is no better. There's just personal preference.
You guys
Anthrax
are
or Megadeth. I don't know. Which one do you like? I think we're both probably top of the heap as far as quality and performance. It's just a matter of which one do you like. Do you go to the A bin or the M bin in the record store?
Well, see, I've listened to everything that Anthrax and Megadeth has had. I've only had your coffee. I haven't had his. So okay. I need your expert opinion, though. I mean, you're a coffee
Well, since you've had mine and not his, then I guess mine so far is the best.
Yes. So I should not even try his once. If I even get.
No, you should definitely try his. You should definitely try his. Yeah. No, he's got good coffee. In fact, when I opened the store back in Jackson, Minnesota, he hit me up about. Hey, get me in your store. Let me put my coffee in. And that was our initial aim with that, was to try to, expand that out. It's a small little community, so we needed to kind of keep things localized. So we ended up doing a Jackson House blend under my name. But all the blends and all the coffee we have there are just Ellefson coffees.
Okay. Do you, like, for what you're brewing at home, is there a process you like to go through? Do you prefer beans? To grind your own, or?
Well, yeah, I always prefer beans myself because they last longer. Don't put them in the freezer. That's an old myth that does not work.
Is the fridge okay or not?
Well, just regular room temperatures. I mean, think about where they grow.
Okay.
They don't grow in the refrigerator, right? Or in a cold climate, they grow in usually a warm tropical climate. So it's okay to have them outside. The main thing, of course, try to keep them dry more than anything. So anyway, just in a bag or in a container. For me, on the road, I just got a great French press, and it's a brand new one. I don't even know, the lady who cuts my hair got it for me as a gift, and I've been using it on tour, and it's great. It doesn't get all the extra little coffee sediment, that comes into the coffee, which often happens from a French press. Mm-hmm. So that, to me, is probably my favorite, really authentic method of coffee. At home, I usually use drip coffee, not a Mr. Coffee, but that type of style, And it's funny because in America, as you travel the world, you really start to see the origins of coffee, how people prefer it. Usually when you leave America, for the most part, it's espressos. The true Italian thing is you drink the espresso shots, cappuccinos, and milk-added coffees only in the morning, never in the afternoon. And often, they'll eat a meal and they'll just have a little shot after a meal to sort of pick them up and make sure they don't fade after eating. So that's kind of
a good tip.
So it's interesting how coffee is like that. But in Canada, certainly the U.S. and Japan, because Japan kind of tends to trend after us, at least with coffee. It's mostly the Mr. Coffee, drip filter type of coffee. So we all have brought something, I guess, unique to the table with that, and that's America's contribution to coffee.
Sure. How many cups a day you drink?
I usually 2. I have one in the morning when I get up, and then I have one in the afternoon, like 3-4 o'clock-ish, something like that, and then that's it. I'm done.
You mentioned Jackson, Minnesota. I was actually not too far I don't know. I forgot to tell you, I live in Minnesota, born and raised. So it's a big deal anytime we get to talk to Dave Ellefson.
Nice.
But I was actually kind of down in your neck of the woods, not in that area I'm from. I live in the Twin Cities. I'm from Owatonna, if you know where that is.
I do.
But I went to see one of your label signees, the Ron Keel band at Redwood Falls.
Yeah.
So it's not quite to your place, but I think Jackson's closer to Iowa. But
yeah, we were just there literally last week. We finished our first run of Bass Story. We did a month of Bass Story shows around the More Life with Death book and the Sleeping Giants album that's out now. And we finished in St. Paul at the Turf Club, and then we snuck down to Mankato and played our favorite little spot there, the What's Up Lounge.
Yeah.
But we didn't go any farther.
You go to Mettler's?
I did not go to Mettler's. No.
That's a Minnesota
joke. But we did go in to see actually these guys. I got the T-shirt on, 95 Rock. Went over to see them in Mankato. But I'm about if you went. And it's further kind of southwest down off I-90. That's where Jackson is.
Right on. Well, enough Minnesota talk. One thing I brought up Ron Keel because you have quite a broad base of bands on your label, EMP Records, or Label Group is what it's called.
Yeah.
But you also have kind of been a lot of bands that kind of made their stake in the 80s. It reminded me a little bit of the movie The Decline of the Western Civilization, where it was like all these kind of like Sunset Strip bands and Megadeth.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Well, as we were sitting down, we were talking about Dollskin, which is a young all-female group that I saw play their very first show in my son's high school. The drummer was a senior, I think, that year,
Okay.
and she was in the band and decided to play at this talent show. And I thought they were just fantastic, so I stayed in touch with them the next year or two. Finally took him in the studio, produced an EP that we put out through a distribution deal through Megaforce Records. And that kind of came by way of when me and Frank Bello put out our first Altitudes and Attitude EP. Missy over at Megaforce had kindly offered us a sort of a channel into her distribution if we wanted to bring in, kind of imprint in other things. And I'm, pretty progressive with that. I look for bands, things come to me, I produce. So we initially started there. When I met my partner, Tom Hazart, who dreams up a lot of these crazy ideas while I'm out in my full daytime job as being a bass player and a rock star and doing that side over there. Yeah. I call Tom. We talk several times a day, and he calls up and goes, "Oh my God, how about let's start a label." So we did. We turned that Dollskin EP into an LP called In Your Face Again, because the EP was In Your Face. And then we put that out. That was the first one. And so initially I thought the label would be a cool way for me, like when I produce things, to have an outlet to put out my own productions. Because as soon as you produce something, unless you're hired by a label to produce it for them, when you do sort of spec things like I tend to do, I get passionate about something, I take it to the studio, I produce it. You then come out of the studio and you're very attached to this and you've put your creative work into it. Now you have to walk around the record business and with your tin cup and hat in hand and beg people for a record deal. And what I realize is I've done that a few times and enough times to know that everybody's got their own band or project or artist that they're all enthralled in. And so I was like, I hate this. It's like as soon as you come out of the studio, the train has run out of track, and your enthusiasm dies, and it sucks. So by starting EMP Label Group, which is an acronym for Ellefson Music Productions, I wanted it to be very broad. I didn't want it to be just a metal label.
Sure.
And even though Tom sort of positioned it a little bit like Victory Records, having its own brand, our own merchandise, and that stuff, I wanted it to be very broad. And so as Tom and I would, here he comes. And as we would talk about it, suddenly, every day he'd call me and say, "Hey, I got this, another group that I think would be, we should put out through the label." And it started kind of initially with metal stuff, and then it turned into Mark Slaughter and to Ron Keel and can
I ask how Flip got in the picture? They're kind of a local band that I got into a lot.
they're talking to him.
I've known Brendan for a long time, and we're just kind of buddies, and me and him worked on some stuff with TKO from Seattle and some other stuff, and Brendan just hit me up one day and said, "Hey, you want to do a Flip greatest hits?" I'm like, "Sure, what's that?" I love the band. I'm from the Midwest.
Okay.
He's from Minnesota. I'm from Wisconsin. So it's kind of right in our wheelhouse. It's kind of right in our wheelhouse, the Midwest and Minneapolis.
That explains the wardrobe.
Cheap shot.
Where are you from? That get up?
Minnesota.
Twin Cities. I mean, come on. Right.
The suburbs.
Yeah.
I'm Switzerland down the middle.
I'm just kidding.
Outside.
I'm just kidding. Now.
But anyways, so that's how Flip kind of just, through being friends with Brent and him just going, "Hey, let's do a Flip greatest hits." I'm like, "You guys have hits?" Like, kinda. It's actually called the best of the worst of Flip, which I love.
I will say this. Last week we had a really great, Sunday, when we were at Grill 'Em.
Yeah.
So a great, terrific heavy metal hamburger joint out in East L.A., a town called Alhambra. Where I very well known, in fact, Abattoirs from there. A lot of the Armored Saint was kind of out east like that. So there was kind of two factions of metal when I got to L.A. in '83. There's a Sunset Strip stuff, which of course was Quiet Riot, Motley Crue, Rat, and made famous once Van Halen had moved in from Pasadena into the Sunset Strip. They kind of kicked that off as far as 80s rock stuff, 70s, 80s rock. But, we were at this hamburger joint, Grill 'Em the other day, which is a terrific heavy metal hamburger bar. And it really hit me how it just reminded me again of the sort of divided faction where our genre of thrash metal did not find our home on the Sunset Strip at all. In fact, when I met Dave, I'd moved to L.A. and within a week I'd met Mustaine, and first thing he said, he goes, when we debut Megadeth, we are not going to debut here in L.A. We're going to go up to San Francisco, where he, of course, had fame with Metallica. But they'd kicked around enough, a couple shows in L.A. to know that L.A. was not going to support our cause of our music. So it was so cool to be out there. Because I bring this up because you mentioned the decline of Western civilization, which was basically all, Gazzari's club gone. The Rainbow is a shell of what it used to be. It's basically a monument almost to the old days, the glory days of it. We were having dinner there, and by 11:30, the frickin' dining room was empty. On a Friday night. I mean, usually in the days past Friday night, 11:30, that's when it's just getting going.
Yeah.
That's when all the hottest girls and David Lee Roth and Slash and Steve Vai and everybody was there, and everybody's going to the bathroom to do whatever, and that was just what it was. And it's funny because Tom, even when he got there in the late 90s, I think for you went there to go have dinner and talk business.
Yeah.
We went there to forget about business and get down to business.
Yeah.
So
by the time I got there, there was none of. By the time I got there, there was none. I missed the '80s. I moved there actually kind of in the first time in the kind of mid, like 94. Then I was there for a year or two, and then I went back home. So it kind of took me a couple tries to get up there to stay, but I missed all the debauchery by like 4 years, so, but it was cool. I got to be a part of, the next wave of Power Man 5000, Snot and Korn and Human Waste Project and, all those bands that kind of came up, Head PE, that kind of came up out of LA. So, it was cool. We had our own little scene, and I got to watch all that stuff, but it wasn't the same. I wanted to be there for that, I wanted to be there for the decline of Western civilization.
Yeah, you and me both.
But we missed it.
I was there.
He was in the movie.
Hence Space Story.
Which I'm sure you guys noticed, like literally half of our label now is people from the decline.
Yeah, we were talking about just before you walked in.
That's actually what brought that up. Yeah, transition.
Yeah, because it's very similar to that movie in the sense, because not only in the sense that was a lot of 80s bands, and you guys really stuck out in that movie as far as being the only thrash representative in there. But your label is much more broad than that, but it's just kind of, it has been a home for a lot of, your Mark Slaughter. I think I saw Dangerous Toys.
We did some Dangerous Toys reissues, and Jason's been a dear friend of mine for a long time, and we actually did reissue some of the Odin records, and, my previous label, I put out some records for Lizzie Gray, rest in peace, is a dear friend of mine had just passed away this week from London, and I put out some records with his Spiders and Snakes band, so it's funny, but the Decline 2 is such a pivotal, defining moment in my life, just as a fan coming up and coming into business. And it's funny. It's like now, it just, I've noticed like our label, a lot of things just sort of pivot around that,
Well, growing up in a small southern Minnesota town, watching that movie was like, it was like, boner and raging. It's like, I have to do that. That's my life.
I grew up in Green Bay doing the same thing. Like, I have to do that. That and Motley Crue. And our new book, I literally talk about watching that and Motley Crue Uncensored and going, that's why I moved to L.A. Literally was those two things. And the Doors are the things that made me move to L.A.
And Dave, before I forget, I would be remiss to ask any update on, without breaking HIPAA laws, how is the Mr. Mustaine doing?
I think he's going through his treatments right now. We put out a calendar with our whole organization about a week and a half ago, and I'd spoken to Dave about a week ago when we were out wrapping up our tour and everything, and he sounded in good spirits and just going through it, and but the nature of what it is, there's it's a kind of a daunting time, you know what I mean, and. So, definitely appreciate all thoughts and prayers to him. I mean, we're in our best optimistic view, we'll go through this, he'll go through it, and we'll be up and running again. But, until that happens, we got the cruise, which we kept that in place. In fact, we just added Lamb of God to that.
Cool.
I don't think there's a better heavy metal cruise sailing the high seas than that one, quite honestly.
Fair enough.
So that's going on. But yeah, so, I think, look, we're just kind of really taking it kind of day at a time, a week at a time, a month at a time. We just kind of see how the treatments go, and hopefully everything is successful. And But until then, we're just kind of walking through it methodically.
Okay. Well, all the best to Dave, obviously, from everybody. In much less serious news, before I heard the announcement about that, I did hear you guys are working on a record. Were you almost done? Where are you at as far as the progress of that?
Last year was mostly just we'd really cleaned all the vaults out by the time we did Dystopia. I mean, there wasn't one single riff or note laying around anywhere. So when we finished up pretty much the world tour of Dystopia back in late about November 2017. We really just shut down for all of 2018 to write. And that was really everybody bringing ideas to the table.
Okay.
First time that Kiko was involved writing. Obviously, Dave and I have been through this process a gazillion times. And certainly bringing Dirk in. And he's written some really cool stuff for the album. And then, when we got together back in May, I mean, keep in mind, and this seems like a long, distant memory now, but there was supposed to be an Ozzy Megadeth tour this summer.
Yeah.
Which, that even to me sounds like...
Ozzy had to go to the bathroom.
Sounds like that was years ago, but yeah, once that... I mean, that was the first thing that kind of got kicked off the plate, which was, immediately launched us into let's get to Nashville and start working on the record immediately.
Yeah. Okay.
And then, of course, right at that time, Dave got the news about his cancer, so it was kind of like, kind of a 1-2 punch right there. But during that process, we continued to work on stuff. So there's still work that needs to be done. We have not started recording it.
Okay.
But we're writing it. We're doing a ton of pre-production on it. And it's, taking our time. Dave doesn't seem to really be in a hurry with it. I mean, he seems to be kind of wanting to take his time and listen to it and sit back and listen to it. And I think that gave... It gave us a chance for everybody to be involved in some of the decisions with it, not just saying, hey, we got to get a record done, this is it, turn it in. It's like, no, let's really be discerning and critical. I mean, Tom and I even talk about it all the time. I mean, this one's every record's important.
Yeah.
But I think, now given the sort of obstacles in the way, I think it also gives a little bit of human introspective to maybe even lyrically. Some different things happen when, you can't write a record if you don't have anything to say.
Right.
And suddenly, sometimes coming off big successful records is not the time to be writing a record because you need to live some life experiences that give you something to write, and when you've just been sort of, traipsing around Valhalla, in your victory lap, sometimes you need to step back away from that a bit and have some life experiences to give you something to write about. So, this could be an interesting season of things to actually have lyrics for as well.
Cool. I'm definitely looking forward to it. They're asking me to wrap it up. So, Dave, Tom, I appreciate your time.
Yeah.
Let's see if you want to give real quick. We should mention Sleeping Giants is out now. We got Tom on lead vocals, at least on one song, or
No.
Couple, three.
Three.
I haven't had a chance to check it out yet.
Yeah, no, there's 3 new songs. One is all me. One is me, and that's Vultures, which we actually, Max Norman just did a remix of that's coming out in a couple weeks. It's awesome.
Cool.
And then Sleeping Giants is me and DMC from Run DMC, which we just finished a video. We're going to drop for that next week. And then Hammer Comes Down is me and Eric A.K. from Flotsam, and that one's got Mark Tremonti on it, and Chris Poland, and Dave McClain, and half of Sacred Reich, and and then our friend Christian Nair and Hodor from Game of Thrones did a remix of Vultures that's on there. Yeah, and then the rest is a bunch of cool. David had some songwriting demos with John Bush and David Glenn Isley. We put those on there, and then a handful of F5 demos. It's a really cool kind of retrospective of David's body of work outside of Megadeth. There's been so much, and it doesn't get acknowledged that much. Or it's always kind of been framed around Megadeth, and that was kind of what's cool about this was, putting the spotlight on all the stuff. David's, been a really prolific songwriter outside of Megadeth, so it was cool to kind of take some of that stuff and put a light on it, and that's sort of what Sleeping Giants was.
Right on. Well, Tom, it's actually good to meet you. We've kind of had some close calls over the last couple of years as far as trying to arrange something. So it's a pleasure to finally put a face.
Good to be here.
Yeah. And of course, Dave Ellefson, fellow Minnesotan and member of the Big Four, bass player of Megadeth, and an idol and icon. Just what a pleasure. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.